All right, we're here today with Leeno Dee, and I'm very excited about this chat. Thank you so much for joining us on the Bass Bass channel.
Pleasure.
So tell me, when did you first pick up the bass?
Starting when I was 12, guitar for a little while for my 12th birthday that my dad bought me, but didn't really take to it. I was aware of bass because a buddy of mine who was 5 years older than me, John Jerkovic, who I'm still friends with, introduced me to a band called The Sweet when I was about 8 or 9 years old. And there was a song they played called Rock and Roll Disgrace, and it had this amazing sound at the front of it. And I said to him, "What is that?" He said, "Oh, that's bass." Explain the difference between bass and guitar, and I just loved the sound of it. But then it took me, I guess, maybe until I was about 15 or 16 to actually get a bass in my hands, when I went over to another mate's house and he had a bass leaning in the corner of his room, and I asked him, what is that? It's too big to be a guitar, bigger than a guitar. And he said, "It's a bass. I bought it because I wanted to play bass, but I'm going to get rid of it." So I said, "You mind if I borrow it?" He said, "No, take it away." So I'll just keep it for a couple of days. I kept it for a full year, and only giving it back when I finally bought my own one a year later, which was a Korean-made Amina EB3 copy. And that was what I used for the next few years till I got a real bass, like a proper, yeah. So 15, I guess, is when I really started.
What was the real bass?
It was an Ibanez Blazer, which for me at the time was a real bass because Ibanez was all made in Japan back then, and they were sort of getting pretty well known. You know, they'd been famous for copies, and there was, like, Steve Harris was showing up using an Ibanez Blazer in some photos and stuff. So you thought, okay, when the opportunity came up to buy one from someone, I bought it. You know, that served me until I got my first BC Rich.
Yeah, nice. So, and then from starting out playing, can you remember when you first decided that you wanted to join or form a band? Oh
yeah, that was the same time when I was about 9 or whatever, when my mate John played me The Sweet, because I'd been aware, I'd grown up with Beatles, Tom Jones, the Stones, all that stuff, because my parents had all that stuff on quarter-inch tape. My dad used to play a lot of reel-to-reel tapes, and he had a lot of records. But it wasn't until John said to me, "You've got to hear this record I bought," and he played it for me, and it was Wigwam Bam by The Sweet, and it had just come out, and I'd never heard anything like that in my life. I mean, I reckon in that moment my life changed at that age, because then he said, "If you like the record, wait till you see what they look like." And he came out with a British magazine called It's Here and Now, and there was this 2-page photo of them, and there's these 4 guys in 1972 covered in makeup, lipstick, glitter, the whole bit, you know. I was like, blew my 8, 9-year-old mind or whatever I was, you know. I was just looking at it going, wow, like, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to be, you know. So overnight, pictures of racing cars, dragsters came down off the wall. Pictures of men in makeup with long hair went up. So I don't know what my parents thought, but luckily they weren't against it. They let me go, so just let him do it, you know. So that's when I thought, I want to be in a band. No matter what happens, I have to be in a band. So whatever I do, whether it's singing, playing guitar, you know, I didn't know what a bass was yet, so guitar or singing. Never thought drums, because I love drums, but I never wanted to be back there. I always wanted to kind of be showing off, so.
Leeno, let's talk bass.
Let's talk bass. Try and shut me up on this one.
So let's talk about your bass in particular. I always saw you with a Thunderbird, and I really thought that was a permanent attachment, and I was surprised to see the Ricky emerge. Tell me how that happened.
The Thunderbirds happened in 1990 in the Candy Harlots, when I walked into Downtown Music, because Thunderbirds were rare as hen's teeth. I walked into Downtown Music, and the guy that ran the shop, Carlo, had one hanging on the wall that was brand new. It was a Thunderbird 4 that had just come out. And I went straight over to it, and I went, no way. And I took it down, and he plugged me in, and I played it for about half an hour. And I said, "I'm coming back. How many of these have you got?" He said, "Just one. It's the first one in the country." And I said, "Put it away. I'm coming back in a couple of days." In those days, I've got to make sure I can afford it, you know. It was something like $1,500. He did 1,400 for me, you know. I still remember, because I remember that I went out and I organised $1,400. I said, cash, what will you do me? He said, $1,400. I went in and got it. Then when we signed with Virgin, we got our advance, we each got some money. I found a guy selling one. He'd bought it brand new. He'd bought the second one that had come in about a year later, or whatever it was. And because the guy said to me, he was in Coogee, and he said to me, they told me that this is only the second one. I was like, whatever, I don't care. I bought the second one, so I had a pair, and I used those for, 6 or 7 years. One of them, the headstock fell off, which is they're prone to. And then the second one, the headstock fell off about a year later, and I got it repaired. And the guy that repaired it said, look, this is going to be okay, but not for a guy in the Candy Harlots, because I've seen what you do to your basses. You should get rid of it. I got rid of it. I replaced those with a pair of Gibson Rippers, which were built like brick shithouses. So I played them for a few years. Then I went back to another Thunderbird, a couple more Thunderbirds down the line, until I was rehearsing with Jerk, and the head fell off my new Thunderbird. It just literally has to touch something, and they just go, see ya. And Charles said to me, look, you've always played a Thunderbird. Let me build you one. So we got together and came up with a Thunderbird. And it was the best Thunderbird I've ever had, and I still have it. That's 22 years now. I recorded the entire Jerk album with it, and I've still got it. It's fantastic. But I've moved along a bit with what I do. I got my first Rick. This one, the 4000. There's a 4000 when I got it, and it's 1979. Got it online from a store in New York. Literally just seeing it listed in a shop, and I contacted them, went back and forth with them for a couple of months, thinking, please don't buy it, please don't buy it, please don't someone buy it. And finally they said, you know what, you can have it, we'll do a deal. They brought the price down for me because the exchange rate and everything, and I was like, the exchange rate's really bad and the import duty. I was crying, and they finally gave in and said, this poor bastard, let's just not make much money on it, let's sell it. And I got it. It came in and it was a dream. So that then led me to buying a 2015 a few years later, and I've been using them ever since. I've had quite a lot of basses. I've got a Warwick Star bass, a Korean long scale, which is beautiful, and I've used that. And I've got this little Edwards, this little Japanese Edwards. It's like a double cutaway Les Paul, and it's the meanest little Gibson sound ever. I used it for a track on the album, but the Fireglow's been pretty much my main bass for probably the last 5 or 6 years, and I've been sort of reluctant to get this one out too much because it's pretty valuable, but I do like using it. I used it at the show that you came to recently. Yep. So. Yeah. And
you told me you put new strings on it. So
yeah, well, was lucky enough to...
Not just new strings, different strings.
Well, no, yeah, I not that long ago, maybe a year ago, I became a Rotosound endorsee through National Music in Queensland, which has been fantastic because Rotos were the first strings I ever knew existed. Who knew brands of strings? Rotos I used to see advertised when I was a kid, and you couldn't find them. So I always wanted them. And then when I could see them in shops, they were out of my league, So I always wanted to try them, and through National Music, I got to try them and loved them. So I've been using them ever since, and they made me an endorsee, which is I'm really proud of. And I started out with 105s because that's what I used to use. In fact, in Jerk, I used to use 110s. We went heavier there. But I've gradually got lighter and lighter. I was using 90s. And now this is the first time I've put hundreds. Sorry, I was using hundreds. These are 95s. I had a chat with Paul Gray from The Damned, who's a Rickenbacker guy, and he was telling me that he's gone to 95s and that they work really well on Ricks. So I thought, why not put them on? And he was right, man. They really twang. They're great.
How about buying new basses? How do you go about buying them? Do you buy them online, through recommendations? Do you have to play it before you buy it?
I've rarely been able to find, except for the early days, because I guess there was, before eBay and Gumtree and online buying and Reverb, the shops always had a lot of stuff. Well, for a start, there were shops. There's barely any around anymore, and they had a lot of second-hand gear and imported gear. My Hamer bass that I had a Hamer Blitz bass that I bought off Gumtree, of all places, and the Thunderbirds were in stores. Mockingbirds were both from stores. The BC Rich Bitch that I had was from a store. You know, everything was shops. That's where you bought stuff. But now, if you want to find something specific, you can't walk into a shop and just see a Rickenbacker hanging on a wall. Where do you go? So you've got to kind of take a shot, and they're not cheap. So I've taken a shot on both of these and been fortunate. They're both completely different. They sound different, they feel different, the necks are different, but they're both great, you know? So, and I use them both on the album extensively, pretty much most of it. The only other bass on the album is Fender Bullet that I've got, a pair of Bullets, which I love. Yeah, it's pretty much just seeing stuff online and getting excited and making the decision, am I going to take a punt on this? That's it.
It's tough.
I was lucky with these two.
Yeah, it is definitely tough to take a punt for that sort of money.
You do.
Yeah. Can you take me through your setup now? What are you using? Amps, pedals, that sort of...
Right. Well, my main rig, what I've got here today is what we call my B rig or my fly rig, my go-to. My A rig, the main thing is, in Jerk, I had an endorsement with Ashdown. So I had the big ABN 900 head, and I had I had a 4x10, a 115, and I've still got I got rid of all that when the endorsement ended, but I've still got the 8x10. So I've got the Ashton 8x10, and then I've got this Tech 21, whose stuff I've been using for years. So Tech 21 VTB 1969 head, which the only other guy I know that used them was Gene Simmons. He had a couple of them, and he's been using them for years. Still uses them up until the last tour that they did. And there was one that National brought out to Australia, and the whole idea was they were going to bring them out and I was going to endorse it. They sent it down to me and I fell in love with it. And then they said that they weren't able to bring them out because the company wasn't going to keep making them because of the expense, because they're all made in the US. It was something like that anyway. I can't remember exactly, but they weren't bringing it out anymore, but I got to keep it. And it's just an amazing head. It's rack mounted, 300 watt, 2 channels, which are blendable. So you can set, it's almost like a biamp thing with one input. You can set one channel really fat and clean or whatever, and then you can set the top channel. The bottom channel I would set like an SVT, like a classic, and then the top channel I would set like a Marshall for the top end, and then blend them. And it's a sound that, it's like for me, I can't get it anywhere else. The closest I get is with the rig I've got that I've put together when I can't, because a lot of shows now, you know, you can't fly, you know, a 15 kilo head and a bloody 8x10, you know. And a lot of shows, if you're opening for people, you've got to get in and out. So loading an 8x10 and then lugging the big head and putting it on top. I do it when it makes sense, because I do love the feel of the big rig behind me. But I put together this fly rig, which is pretty much, I can walk into a gig with a pedalboard case and a bass case and I'm ready to go. Without sacrificing too much quality, you know. It still packs 300 watts and it's still got the front end sound of Tech 21, the Tech 21 gear, which I like the sound of. So
you're running a Tech 21 preamp in that?
Yeah, what I've got is a VT DI and it's going into the Ashdown, and the Ashdown's pretty much just doing power amp work, 300 watts into the effects return. And then I've got an Origin Cali 76 compressor, which is a really, really great addition to the sound as well. Beyond that, there's just a little Rocktron Mini Hush, which I never have to use, but I've got it there because there've been times in the past where I've got to a venue and the power's dirty, and I've been glad to have it, but otherwise it's off unless I really need it. And there's a Line 6 G50 wireless unit out of sight underneath it, and I've got 3 of those. I've got a rack one in the other head, and I've got a spare one at home as well. It's old. It's like I've had all of it for 10 years, but it's never let me down. Really good gear.
Fantastic. What makes someone a great bass player?
everybody's so different. For me, I guess it's playing for the song, remembering that the song is king. I mean, everybody likes to show off a little. Everyone likes to put stuff in, and because it does feel good. But at the end of the day, it can't get in the way of melody, or it's got to support melody and vocals and stuff like that. So I guess it comes down to feel and knowing what to play, when to maybe lay out a little, or dynamics, when to pull back a little and when to hit harder. I guess it's all stuff that's just got to come from the player, that you've got to feel what you're playing for. I guess being excited about what you're doing too, because that lends itself to being a better player, I think. Even if being a better player means being a little haphazard and being a little, like I said earlier, colouring outside the lines, not being note perfect. There's a sort of feel and a... Let me put it this way. One of my favourite players is Chris Squire. When I was a kid, I heard Roundabout on the radio. Back in the days when radio would actually play something that's 9 minutes long, I heard Roundabout, and I didn't even know that was a bass guitar, that riff, And when I found out it was bass, I was like, man, I've got to find out more about this band. I've been listening to his raw tracks where they, on YouTube, you can just hear. He's such a revered bass player, and you hear how he's playing, and he's digging into those strings, he's bending notes, he's noise, there's scrapes, there's all this extraneous shit going on because he's got verve. And that comes through in the music, and that excited me as a kid when I heard that. There's an energy, it's not about being note perfect and controlled and careful. For me, and Geezer Butler, hearing Geezer Butler play live, and that guy is just phenomenal, smashing his bass and just, those kind of guys. And Gene Simmons, obviously for me, was a big, exciting player. Gets put down a lot as a bass player, but I think he's great. Great feel, great runs, So I guess, it's kind of just... really enjoying what you're doing that makes you a great bass player. I guess it's no different to what makes a great guitarist. If guys go off in whittly diddly land all the time but then can't hold down a really feely rhythm, what do you got? Look at Keith Richards. It's brilliant. Ronnie Wood, those guys are brilliant. Yeah. Same thing, I think.
Australian bass players, any Aussies?
Oh, Australian? Well, yeah, like I said, for me, the guys, Laurie Marlowe, when I used to go and see Heaven, I was always... He had this stance, like this really tough guy stance, and he head down and he just used to pummel away at that bass, and he had such a great sound, It was one of the first guys I remember using an SVT and thinking, I love that guy's sound. And if he had a P bass or if he had a Hamer, he still had that sound, that grindy sound. So I always thought he was great. Steve Balby blew me away because I just used to, just think, Jesus, had with that Stingray, and he just played great. I don't want to leave anyone out that I know is great, but right now can't think of too many. Obviously, Blocks was great. Craig was always great because he had that P, and he had the P bass and the Ampeg SVT, and he had that really fat, grindy tone, which I've always loved. And he really attacked his bass too, which I liked. I've always loved guys I've always been more about pick players, obviously, because that's the people that influence me more. So hearing people grind it out always feels good to me, So I guess those guys would be my main local people that your formative years, you see those guys and they stick with you.
Absolutely, yeah. What advice would you give to aspiring bass players?
Oh, listen to the whole band. Easy. Listen to the whole band. Listen to what everyone's doing. Learn to play with the drums and hear what the kick drum's doing, but then learn not to do that just because you think you have to. Because a lot of the best people don't do that. A lot of like actually, if you listen to Yes, the drummer, like if you listen to Bill Bruford and Chris Squire, to me, I can't hear those guys locking in a lot of the time. I hear two guys really going off in different places, but somehow making it work because they're just such brilliant musicians. You know, they're both doing what they want to do, but they're not, you know, carefully locking in. And that's really exciting music. So learn how to do it, but then also learn how not to do it. Learn how to just go off and do some riffing and stuff if it works for the song, if it doesn't get in the way of, you know, you don't want to be soloing through a vocal, you know. But I think listen to everything. Listen to the guitars, listen to keyboards, listen to drums, listen to singing, and learn where your place is within that. Because you can be just as important as a voice. You don't have to be a support instrument all the time. You can still be up front, you know, and do what you do and be excited about it. So yeah, just listen to everything. Listen to songs and listen to, here we go, listen to, this was important, listen to everything. Don't listen to one kind of music and just go, I love metal, I'm not listening to anything else. You know, I guess I was spoiled as a kid because radio, you'd hear ABBA, you'd hear Queen, you'd hear Led Zeppelin, you'd hear Black Sabbath, you'd hear Leif Garrett, you'd hear everything. And I grew up loving everything. If I liked the song, I didn't care about who the artist was, didn't matter. Kids at school hated Leif Garrett. Oh, Leif Garrett, that's girly. No, the song's great, you know. I was made for dancing. Listen to the bass in that, you know. Everything's got something you can learn from. If you listen to Dancing Queen, that guy's a motherfucker, the bass player. That bass line is incredible.
It is, yeah. I love that ABBA stuff.
Play that funky music. Yeah. Listen to the bass line in that. So listen to all types of music. Don't limit yourself.
Yeah. Did you ever have lessons?
Did I?
Have lessons?
No, never.
Self-taught?
No. I this is how it did. I borrowed my friend's Riviera jazz bass. I took it home and I put Love Is Like Oxygen on by The Sweet. The reason I did that was because I'd seen on the video that we had no tuners, right? I'd seen on the video that Andy Scott's hand was here, right? And then I thought, if I can work out where that is on the bass, luckily my mate had a keyboard. He was an organist, he played keyboards and he'd tuned the bass to that in E. So it was already in the right place, but I thought, if I can learn where that is, I can play along to the record. And I did that. Once I had that down, I put Kiss Alive on, and I started, for the next 2 months, learning every song. You know, just hearing the riffs and learning them. And that was how I learned, playing along to records. 100 times, take the needle off, work it out, put the needle back on, go back, take the needle off, put it back on, you know. And you do that for like the next 5 years, you know. And then comes the day when you're going to go and jam with your first band, and you've played sitting down, and you buy a strap, and you stand up and you go, oh my God, I can't play. It's a whole learn all over again, you know.
Yeah, that was Bloxy's one tip for everyone, was play standing up.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So Zipperin, what else is on your musical bucket list?
Musical bucket, I guess, look, I've been lucky enough to have done a lot and lived out a lot of dreams. And I think when I was a kid at school, borrowing that first bass, I've got to meet just about everybody that I had on my wall, you know, almost everybody. I've got Dave Hill from Slade, you know, people like that, people that were integral to me when I was a kid, Susie Quattro, Alice Cooper, Kiss, all of that. For me, I've got to do all that. I've got to make records. I got to be in pin-ups, you know. I've got to sign autograph. I've got to do all that shit. It was fantastic. So I'm just happy that I've got to do it all. So I guess the only thing left is, what's important to me now is to keep writing, because I still really enjoy writing, and I do think that I'm writing some really good stuff now, if I do say so myself. Stuff that pleases me. I don't want to sound conceited and go, you know. It's more that I'm writing stuff that if I didn't think it was good, I wouldn't be doing it anymore. Going into singing has been fun. because it is one thing that does get me a bit on edge, because I always think, I know I'm not Ronnie James Dio, you know, or someone like that, but I'm going to make it work, you know. So that's good, because it keeps me striving for more. So yeah, keep writing. I want to keep recording. I want to keep putting records out. I want to keep playing live as long as I can still stand up and hold a bass, you know. Just keep doing it. I enjoy it. I gave up a long time ago on the idea of this, you know, the mansion with the guitar-shaped swimming pool in Hollywood, you know. That stopped being important a long time ago. So it's good, because now for the last, 15 years I've been free of all that, and it's pretty much just been, you do it because you want to do it, you know. So that's it. My musical bucket list, just to keep doing it. Keep doing it with people that I love too, which is what I've got now.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, we look forward to seeing what comes next in the new Department of Gloom album.
Yeah, me too.
And thank you so much for joining us on the channel.
Absolute pleasure.
Thank you.